I call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District's Board of Education for Tuesday, August 14th, 2018. And we will begin by rising to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Matsuoka.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Buenas tardes para miembros del público. Si hubiera alguien que necesite interpretación en español, tenemos los aparatos por esas puertas dobles. Muchas gracias.
And we also have headsets for the hearing impaired. They're available, so please indicate if you need a headset. Thank you. Now we're moving on to C5, announcement of closed session action. The board approved a student transfer. And now moving on to C6, superintendent's report. Mr. Matsuoka.
Can I just ask on that, how the vote went on the student transfer more precisely?
It was unanimous.
And who made the motion and who seconded it?
And Kate Parker, Ms. Parker made the motion, and it was seconded by Mr. Paredes Ulloa, and it was all unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Parker. All right, moving forward to superintendent's report.
It's the week before school started, and we're wanting to introduce a new principal among us. And we waited on this introduction because I thought the July 24th board meeting, there wouldn't be that many people around. And so I want to, there's some really important people in the next door room who should come on in. I see them. Lauren probably doesn't know that they're there. Yay. So it's my pleasure to introduce an administrator who's been with us for years at Dos Pueblos High School as an assistant principal. So this is Lauren Berlin and their son Oliver. And Lauren is assuming the principalship of La Cuesta and Alta Vista, and it's a broad responsibility. And when we got to the interview process for Miss Berlin, you're going to hear in her comments that she is an alternative high school kid herself. So it's with pleasure we introduce Miss Lauren Berlin as the next principal for La Cuesta Alta Vista.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you. I have 60 seconds. So I'll just start by saying that I'm really humbled, first and foremost, by the opportunity to get to work with a group of students who have, for whatever reasons, found themselves in alternative education. Aligns them with just what is a passion of mine, which is supporting all learners and finding their voice and finding their successes. And I pursued that path myself in high school. I recognized that the traditional high school route brought me some things that I really enjoyed, but also I wanted something different in my personal learning experience, and very much still have a relationship with my mentor teacher from high school who is on the cutting edge of social justice work in Michigan, where I grew up. And in many ways feel honored to see my path kind of following a mentors of mine from high school, and know that the skills that I learned in that educational setting have prepared me for my path, and for many, taught me many of the skills to help me overcome challenges and really be so passionate about public education and the different things that we can do. So I'm really excited to bring my experiences, both with my background in special education and working with mental health and wellness, and then my own experience as a learner, into our alternative ed space and pick up the amazing work. I have succeeding Fran and Elise, which feels like very big shoes to fill. And again, I'm just mostly humbled by the opportunity, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Matsuoka? Okay, moving on to board comments and correspondence. Any board comments or correspondence? Mr. Paredes Ulloa.
Yeah, I had the opportunity last week, all these works have blurred together, last week to attend a Interpreting for Social Justice presentation last week at San Marcos. I was actually joined there, Dr. Ramirez was there as well, and it was just really good opportunity to hear from some of the interpreters that we have here at the school district, not necessarily in our language access unit, but at our sites themselves. And just kind of hearing what they think of our current process, what are some areas of need, what are some more professional development that they could use to really improve our interpretation translation services at our schools. And I just thought it was a wonderful opportunity to just kind of see it, and I would recommend it to all the board members if a presentation comes up, take advantage and check it out. It's just great to have conversations with those folks and just kind of see where their headspace is.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, just to say that the first day of school is just around the corner, August 22nd. So there's a lot of back to school nights scheduled. So check your school site to figure out when you should be attending. I did also want to add an update for the board members as well as the public around we're going to be starting Coffee with the Board. The idea behind that is to provide an entree for discussion and dialogue with parents and community members around wonderful positive things or maybe possibly issues of concern. But we're hoping to provide an opportunity to be more transparent and be more accessible. And so this is one attempt, as well as other attempts that we are making in terms of visiting the school sites and getting involved in a lot of different activities on the school sites across the district. But this is one thing that's being launched. Beginning September 14th, our first one will be at Harding Elementary, and it will be from 8:45 to 9:45. There will also be interpretation provided. And we will also have our second one will be October 11th. So we're doing this one in the evening from 5:30 to 8:30, and it's going to be at San Marcos High School. The first one, Harding Elementary, my vice president, Ms. Sims-Moten, and myself will be at that scheduled event. And then for the San Marcos High School, we have Mr. Paredes Ulloa and Ms. Capps. And we plan to potentially have a third one before the end of the holiday break. But we're going to see how these two go. So spread the word. We're looking forward to meeting with the community in a more casual and conversational process. So moving on, we have public comments.
Yes, we have two speaker slips. Dr. Andrea Kohlberg, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Okay, to be followed by Melissa Lowenstein. She'll come here, yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to make you aware tonight, as I said, I'm Dr. Andrea Kohlberg, Clinical Director at Mission Harbor Behavioral Health. Just handing out a little brochure for you guys, making you aware of a new service in our community. There has been a great gap for a long time in adolescent services at the intensive outpatient level of care for substance use disorders and other mental health problems, such as anxiety and mood disorders. And so Mission Harbor has decided to fill that gap. And so I want you all to be aware that this intensive outpatient center offers the partial hospital level of care and the intensive outpatient level of care, which means you either come to the center for 6 or 7 hours a day or 3 hours a day just after school. If you're trying to avoid a residential placement, then you would come for the full day where you would have 3 hours of school as part of your day. It's a great stressor for parents to have kids out of school and feel like they're getting behind in school and only adding to their problems. So we will be providing 3 hours of school in our partial hospital program, which is to open in about 45 days. So we already have the intensive outpatient going, and thanks to those of you who have referred people from the community, we are really enjoying getting to know these kids and helping them, like I said, with substance use disorders as well as the underlying problems of anxiety
and mood disorders. A big thing this time of year is school refusal, so we're getting referrals for that. Kids who are very worried about the social anxiety that they experience when they go back to school and often end up using substances to cover up. So I think the other thing I wanted to mention is that we're a network for almost all insurance. So, and we are currently applying for SENCAL coverage. So that is a real plus for our program. We also do offer a handful of scholarships for people who are unable to afford services any other way. That's all I had. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Melissa Lowenstein.
Good evening. So I'm here from AHA, obviously, and I wanted to update the board on some new social emotional learning programs that we have in the schools this fall. Thought this would be a good place to do that. So our AHA Peace Builder program has developed leadership, social emotional intelligence, social conscience, and positive campus climates at area high schools and junior high since 2014. And we're excited to share with you that this year at Santa Barbara, Dos Pueblos, and San Marcos High Schools, we will deliver this program as an enrichment program during seminar and royal time, 1 day per week throughout the year. So no more lunch meetings. We'll be able to do this during the school day. And we'll be able to avoid having to feed kids and bring them social emotional learning at the same time. We also wanted to share that we're training 40 ninth grade teachers at Santa Barbara High School this week in the AHA method, which is our evidence-based curriculum for integrating social emotional learning into classrooms. And we couldn't be more excited or grateful. We're really looking forward to that. And finally, we're implementing a special AHA leadership class at Santa Barbara High. And this is for self-selected student leaders. So this is going to give us a chance to work with some highly motivated youth once a week through the whole year, developing a foundation of social emotional learning, and then bringing a more advanced, comprehensive version of our curriculum, sort of an advanced AHA method for youth. And I also wanted to share that at San Marcos, on September 19th, which is a Wednesday, from 7 to 8:30, AHA staff member and digital citizenship expert Aaliyah Eisenstadt and Dr. Jennifer Freed will be hosting a conversation on digital citizenship. And we would love to have any and all school board members take part in this important conversation. AHA Peace Builder seminars are enrolling now. And if you know any youth who could benefit at any high school, or if you know any educators who might have access to youth who might benefit, I'm going to hand you a little flyer that has contact information for the person who's collecting names for those lists. And we'd love to have you recommend students for this program so we can fill it up and reach a lot of kids. Thank you.
That concludes the public comment.
All right, thank you. So moving on forward to the consent agenda. Are there any items that fellow board members would like to pull? All righty then.
The superintendent would like to pull item number 11.
Is this something you would like to discuss now? Or
No,
like
actually, we need to table it till the next school board meeting.
Oh,
So,
all right. So let's see. Do I have a motion to approve the remaining consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving forward now to our action agenda. We've already taken care of E1, so we will move forward with E2. Board petition for readmission of an expelled student, Education Code 48918, case number 201617-37.
In the case of 201617-37, move approval of re-entry from full expulsion, 1 year school year ending January 2018.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Moving on to action agenda number 3, board action on petition for readmission of an expelled student, Education Code 48918, case number 201617-43.
In the case of 201617-43, move approval for re-entry from expulsion, full expulsion for 1 school year ended January 2018.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving forward to action agenda number 4, board action on petition for readmission of an expelled student, Education Code 48918, case number 201617-59.
In the case of 2016-17-59, move approval, reentry from suspended expulsion for one school year ended June 2018.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to board action on petition for readmission of an expelled student, Education Code 48918, case number 201718-02.
In the case of 2017-18-02, move approval for reentry from suspended expulsion for one school year ended June 2018.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to board action on petition for readmission of an expelled student, Education Code 48918, case number 201718-04.
In the case of 2017-18-04, move approval, reentry, from suspended expulsion for one school year ended June 2018.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to number 7, board action on petition for readmission of an expelled student, Education Code 48918, case number 201718-10.
In the case of 2017-18-10, move approval from full expulsion for one school year ended June 2018.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to board action on petition for readmission of an expelled student, Education Code 48918, case number 201718-15.
In the case of 2017-18-15, move approval for reentry from full expulsion for one school year ended June 2018.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Board action on student discipline, Education Code 48918, case number 201718-45.
In the case of 2017-18-45, stipulated agreement, move approval, expulsion for one with enforcement suspended for one school year which ends January 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to board action on student discipline, Education Code 48918, case number 201718-47.
In the case of 2017-18-47, move approval, expulsion with enforcement suspended. Wait, let me go back. 2017-18-47, stipulated agreement. Approval of expulsion with enforcement suspended, one school year which ends January 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to number 11, approval of agreement between the Santa Barbara Unified School District and Family Service Agency of Santa Barbara County for 2018-19, secondary school mental health services. Dr. Wagener.
Good evening, Dr. Reed and school board. I bring to you a little sigh of relief. I bring to you the agreement between Family Service Agency and the Santa Barbara Unified School District for secondary mental health services for 2018-19. You have the agreement here. I also provided supporting documents, and so I think I will just open for questions or comments from the board at this time.
Board questions, comments? All right, I think we're good. So do I have a motion?
Yes, I will move approval of the agreement between the Santa Barbara Unified School District and Family Service Agency of Santa Barbara County for the 18-19 secondary school mental health services.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we customarily take a break before a report and discussion agenda. Board, would you like us to move forward?
Yes.
We're going to move forward. We will now move on to review and discussion of the Memorandum of Understanding with Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy Foundation. Mr. Matsuoka.
At the last board meeting, July 24th, we shared the quiet but exciting news about the potential of a CTE facility that is just beyond, I would say, the normal scope of what a high school receives. It's an exciting prospect, and now we get into some of the nitty-gritty. So this is a draft MOU statement between Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy Foundation and the district. Craig Price was the primary author. Craig also authored the MOU that was the agreement back in 2009. I shared this really quickly with the team at DPEA. They have some language changes that they want to suggest, but for both boards, their board and our board, this is a first reading. And so I think some of the biggest commitments in there is how does either side get out of this agreement? And both need to have those exit lanes. And also the timeline on transfer of funds. And by the way, we believe that if everything goes according to a timeline, we're breaking ground in, was it February 2021? February 2020. And this MOU actually has delivery of all the funds before we break ground. Now, I'm sure we might get a little pushback in terms of the timing of delivery, but you'll notice the delivery is $500,000, the first payment, in support of the architect fees, $5.5 million at a certain point, and then the final $2 million, but still before ground is broken. So we wanted the board to see this. We wanted to have a first reading, and then, both sides are ready to approve us at August 28th. And the DP Foundation at some point in August. That would be ideal. I think we could let it drift another board meeting, but I think they're especially interested in getting this done because they're out there doing their capital campaign to raise $8 million. And so I think it's important for the donors to see the commitments both sides. So I'll stop there with my comments and let the board ask any questions or add comments.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka. Board comments, questions? Ms. Parker?
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate, I want to call it by the right section number, Mr. Rouse, if you want to scroll down again, it was like number 6, I think, in the, number 6 in the fundraising section, which relates to, also to, in the facility design section, where it talks about the release of the funds. Is that in the facility design section? If you want to scroll down a little bit more. Number 12, yeah. And, that was something that I brought up in terms of a specific board policy, and that is, I'm just sort of slowly pulling it up here. BP 7215. And so I think I would ask that in number 12, there be just a reference to 7215. So as based on the guidelines of 7215, fundraising will disperse funds in the phases as follows. So that would be one suggestion that I have. And I don't know if Mr. Vizzolini has had a chance yet to take a look at this, because that was another question mark was, does this particular board policy and AR need updating? Should we take a look at that? And then another thing that I brought up with Ms. Carey was how will this whole project play out with the other high schools, and what's the input from the other high school principals? And I don't know if you had a chance over the summer to take a look at that, but those are things that I definitely would want to know before we take action. And so those are my question marks. And Mr. Price has done all this before, and we've done this before, and I guess I wasn't pulling them out to, the old ones are actually, it's hard to find them to pull out to compare to the new, but I don't know if there's anything, if Mr. Price talked about anything dramatically different in this 2018 version of a facilities MOU, because otherwise I'm just expecting, it looks pretty straightforward to me, and I'm just expecting that it's as straightforward as previous ones were.
He didn't comment about any language in the old one that he thought was problematic. I think what was probably of most importance was just getting that number 12 is really the heart of this.
Yeah, and that is different, and I appreciate that. And so I'll be interested to see how that works with their foundation, because I know that
the pace of the fundraising is challenging.
Ms. Sims Mountain?
I had a question on number 15 that's in the facility use and access, specifically where it says that the academy and foundation intend to use the facility during non-school times such as evenings. So is there some extra agreement or something around the parameters of what's happening with those during non-school times? Is that like something?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a future design process around another MOU around the use of this facility because it is a very large space. It's designed to be a teaching museum space. And so know that we have some work to do around the shared agreements about that space, especially when you get into weekend use. The foundation plans to play a big role in terms of covering the costs of all of that, because we're certainly not going to provide the personnel to run the place evenings and weekends. So that's part of their vision, is that the foundation wants to do that fundraising and to run the operations for after school.
Thank you.
Ms. Capps?
Yeah, this is more of a comment. I think that I don't take any issue with any of the agreement, but just the description of it. I think that the number one thing we, as board members, hear about with academies is admissions. And so to pass an MOU, one might think from the community that we're getting into all of that. And so I just would like to clarify going forward that this is a facilities MOU, so that the community is not sort of left thinking that maybe we did something here tonight or next meeting that they're unaware of. So if that could be clarified going forward, I think that would be helpful. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And I just wanted to reiterate Ms. Sims Mountain's question. I thank you for speaking to that and the idea that we wouldn't be holding the bag in terms of taking care of the finances for weekends or evenings. So I think we will move forward.
Good.
Moving on to report discussion item number 2, report on measure I and J summer projects. Mr. Vizzolini.
Good evening, Dr. Reed, board members. Your previous meeting, the board was interested in a spreadsheet reporting on of our progress on the bond program or the projects that are going on. So we put together a spreadsheet that basically shows kind of what we completed last summer, what's in effect, what's moving along this summer. I put together a little photo presentation on a couple of these, and I'm happy to answer some questions. I can also go through some of our list and do some narrative if you'd like.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments before you get started?
Oh, no.
Okay.
All right, so our first couple of photos are about Dos Pueblos and our storefront project, phase 2. So as you probably know, we're eliminating some of the, if you look at the picture on the left behind the worker, you can see the old style that's there in the storefronts, and we're adding windows and insulation and plaster to make it a much nicer look on the inside. This isn't finished yet, of course. None of these are finished. We're going to give you the glorious look when everything's done. But that project is complete for the summer. We have another one planned for the winter time where we're going to try a larger fan to see if it makes a different effect with student vision in the classroom. We had a couple of complaints about the other fans kind of being in the way of a television, so we're going to do one more pilot before we go with the big program, just to make sure we get it right. Please interrupt if you have questions at any of these, please.
Dr. Reed, if I may.
Ms. Parker?
How many classrooms will have been piloted before the school starts? And then how many will be in the next pilot phase? And then how many will be in the ultimate, like, do it all?
We've done 2 so far, one each summer, with the input of the site administrator. Did a little bit of testing about temperatures on the first one. Actually have about 80, I believe, on the campus that need to be done, so it will need to be phased. I actually have a meeting next week with an architect to go out there and walk through it and discuss it with Mr. Woodard. And so we'll need to come up with a phasing plan. We're not going to be able to do the whole school in one summer. It's just not feasible. It's also not feasible to do that probably during class time, unless there's a way to, establish some temporary housing somewhere. So we realize that, and we'll come up with a plan before we just dive into it.
Mm-hmm. What were the results of the very first classroom?
The very first classroom.
In terms of, I know temperature is the biggest issue.
Temperature was not very different than the room next door to it. There was two differences. One was the visual effect of being able to look outside of the classroom and not be in a box, which is very popular, obviously. And just the moving of air makes a difference. So that's why we're looking at the larger fan that has a big effect on the entire room with only one fan. The first one had 2, the second one had 4. And 4 seems to be a little much. So we'll leave it that way for now. And if it seems that that's, if that's an area of complaint, then we'll deal with that during the big project. The second is the stadium project. So the right-hand picture, it kind of looks, you can see that the track is gone. There's actually existing asphalt underneath the old track surface, which is in pretty decent shape, which is great news. And a dead field, which we quit watering for graduation. They've started excavating. They're doing pretty well there. We're probably about 30% complete. The school's aware of it, and they're very excited. So we're breaking ground, and that is an older picture. They're now a few feet in the ground. So they're removing soil now at this point. Next, this is Harding, multi-purpose room. So these are almost done. So this, I imagine they will be able to use these certainly for back to school night. And I expect they will probably be completed within the next 2 weeks. The left-hand side is just a little bit of prep work. None of them are complete yet, but you can see the difference in the flooring. The stages have been remodeled and refinished. There's a lot of accent work that you can't see. They're quite beautiful, actually. One of our site administrators, Ms. Binkley from Harding, actually almost broke down emotionally when she walked into it after the painters had been in there. So it's pretty impressive. So it's a very successful project. This is La Cuesta. So out in this area where we did some concrete first to get rid of some terrible paving, and we put a permanent solution in here, we also added a shade structure this summer. So, just a little footing detail on the left for all the poles, and this is what it looks like. This picture was taken today, so they're complete. La Cumbre, Edwell Garden, this is a partnership with the Audacious Foundation. So we took an area out behind the restroom on the right side here, the right picture, the right building was just grass. So now it's completely fenced in. This does not give it justice. It's a very big area. So there will be an edible forest in it. There's plenty of these boxes. It's an interactive area. It's accessible. We're going to paint the back of the left-hand storage cabinet with a type of outdoor chalk paint so they can use it for interactive teaching out in the garden. People are very excited about it. I don't have any pictures for the McKinley fire alarm project because I didn't think you wanted to see someone standing on a ladder. But that project is complete other than testing the battery backup, but that system is up and protecting that school.
If I may, Dr. Reed, I just want to, this is one where there needs to be a lot of parent communication around it, and so I just wanted to be sure that that is something that's happening. Because we had a lot of parent concern around their fire.
Yeah, we're working on, in the district, we're working on a much bigger notification for the community on all of this bond projects things. So after McKinley, this is Roosevelt's MPR. So these are a little more of the construction type, but the restrooms are getting redone, so they'll be accessible with all new fixtures and new tile. They look very nice. This is a pre-stage. This is some of the new acoustical ceiling tiles that go up on the ceiling and in the upper walls. And it too is at the same stage. They are taking down construction fencing and it's ready to be used. In fact, they're going to be using it on Friday. So it's moving along very well. San Marcos pool deck, basically 99% complete. So we've got a couple little punch list items to go, but the school will very likely be back in that pool on Monday. So they're very happy with that. They've done a nice job there. And then we have our ADA bathrooms. So we've, as you know, that's phased. We have focused on some of the areas that the site administration considered critical. So we have the H building, which has the transition program. Some of the special ed kids, we focused on getting those restrooms done first. The kitchen is one, and then we picked one in the main hallway, and then we'll phase into another following that. So those are the pictures, and those are the ones that are all going to be wrapping up this summer. On the bottom of the spreadsheet, there are a whole bunch more that we're waiting for guaranteed maximum pricing for a couple of our heating systems. Santa Barbara High School is very close. McKinley's very close. San Marcos baseball backstop is very close. So Las Flores we're getting pretty close there too. We'll be getting a contractor on board and getting a price for that. We've got a little hiccup in our 21st century classroom. The initial contractor that we used decided they didn't want to do business with us simply because of some of the rules, and they were concerned about their workforce. Their workforce basically put their foot down and said, we're not coming to Santa Barbara for 3 years. So we've already met with some alternatives. We have a plan. We're going to look at a couple more to make sure we go in the right direction, but we're not sitting back and waiting. So we are staying on top of that.
Mr. Vizzolini, can you just expand a little bit for me with the guaranteed maximum price? What does that mean?
Well, basically, once we choose a contractor and the board approves it, that contractor gets to look at the approved set of plans from DSA, and they provide a price. So they bid out all the work to their subcontractors, which we're not involved in. And at the end of it, they provide a guaranteed maximum price. And as long as we don't run into unforeseen problems, that price, there should be very few change orders. That's one of the benefits of doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Let's see, what else? Peabody Stadium. Did I put one of those on here? I think I did. Oh, no, it didn't get on here. I apologize. Peabody Stadium is about, oh, there you go. Sorry, Brian. Peabody Stadium is now 49% complete. It's a little bit behind calendar-wise, which we've talked about because of the problem with the shoring, but that's been corrected. They've actually got steel in the ground. The footings are getting poured this week and next. And on top of that, then will come the foundation. So they're looking at the footings being done by the end of this month and having the slab that they put the grandstands on done by the end of September. So the building will come out of the ground very quickly after this. We're very, very close to that point where you can drive by and actually see grandstands showing up. So that's very exciting. And then, we're still waiting for a GMP on the Santa Barbara Junior High project. It's a very big project. DSA has had a couple of bumps in the road for us related to fire sprinklers and some other things. So we're being patient, but we're ready. The contractor's been selected. They're involved. So once we have those plans, it shouldn't be too long before we can have a number and formulate a plan with the site and the district and get going. But they are using that building for school this year, so they're not affected at this point. And then we have our 2 MPRs for next year. We have Cleveland and Washington, and we have our architects set. We have our contractors have been approved. One of them, we have DSA plans back for Washington, so those are being reviewed by Deani right now. We're expecting Cleveland anytime, and then we'll get a GMP to them. So I expect in the next board meeting or 2, hopefully, we will have quite a few of these ready for you to take a look at. So I'm pretty excited about it. We're moving forward.
Ms. Parker?
Can I just ask, how are things with DSA these days? They have such a terrible reputation, and I don't know if there's been any improvement or if it's something that we are still as a district and as a state of districts struggling with.
Well, I think there's 2 answers to that. One is they are better. They've established a new electronic system they call the box. So it's no longer hand delivery mail. They have an electronic way that you can move forms around and put plans in place, and they can look at them and they send them to you via email. So all of our architects are very familiar with that, and it does streamline the process. And they actually have appointment dates for plan review, at least beginning, input for plan review. And it's very critical that you make those dates once the architect does that. And as long as they make that, they've been pretty good. The bigger projects were still about 6 months, we think. Some of the really large ones like Peabody and possibly the Pavilion will take a little bit longer, but we're building that into our schedule. They're always difficult. They always find something. And the biggest issue for us probably is that we're always renovating a building that's around other buildings that aren't part of it. But they seem to look outside our scope by just that little bit sometimes, and they pick up on things. So that's kind of our challenge. I will say that We've had some pretty good luck with local architects in that arena. We have a couple that have made it their business to drive down to Los Angeles and literally be there every time instead of sending their junior members to do their bidding for them. They go sit in a room and negotiate. And I'll give you a good example. The makerspace we're considering for the second floor of McKinley, we need an elevator. Part of that review is that there are 2 stairwells for emergency access, for egress. And one of the stairwells was done not too long ago, probably in the 80s, so it's relatively not too long ago. DSA originally was going to make us redo the whole stairwell because of some small dimension. So some of the firms we've used, we probably would have been paying a lot more money for that staircase, but one of our local firms went down to LA and got it omitted. So they saved us probably $300,000 on that project alone. So it's worthwhile sometimes to pick who you go with. So.
Great, thank you.
Mr.
Yeah, I just had a question. This all sounds wonderful, and it's great to see the actual pictures of taxpayer money at work, and we're so grateful to have that ability. But I just was wondering if there's any cause for concern on some of them that might not be ready on schedule, and any plans that you can speak to. For example, I know it's my personal example, but the Roosevelt multipurpose room, I know personally how much that gets used, and if it's not ready for a couple weeks.
It'll be usable by the time school starts.
Okay, so for
in both cases.
Great.
And you know, there is a small glitch there, but this goes back to our contractor selected service. The manufacturer of the cafeteria tables wasn't able to deliver them on time.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't there now. They aren't going to be here until probably sometime in September, 2-3 weeks into September. So McGillivray Construction, who is doing those 2 MPRs, they stepped up and they rented tables at no cost to the district,
okay.
and they are going to be in place. They were delivered today,
Okay.
and so they'll be able to use those rooms.
Thank you. That's great.
Mr. Paredes, you go?
Kind of piggybacking on that about delays, we still have a 5/15/19 end date for Peabody, and you mentioned some of the delays that we've hit with that. Are we still looking at 5/15? Are we looking at 6/01?
We're having a little bit of a trouble getting that schedule out of AMG because they don't want to commit to the fact how far behind they are. But just based on, you know, we have our construction management firm, we have our architects. We just met today, and our latest estimate on our side of the fence, so to speak, was 49%. It's supposed to be about 56, I believe, by the calendar. They're making up time. I think that they're going to be okay. They will be a little bit extended. We gave them a little bit of time because of the Thomas Fire and the mudslides. So they gained probably 15 days of credit. There's no financial exchange, but they get a little extra time. The shoring is on them to make up, and they work some Saturdays, and they're doing pretty well. The good news is that the stadium, we think, will be usable for sure for graduation. We're not concerned about that at all. There will be some issues with landscaping because that's the second part of that project anyway. But there has been no talk about the fact of moving graduation at this point.
And then one more thing. Love this chart. Are we going to find it somewhere online? Is it going to get updated? Is it already online?
Absolutely. I can do whatever you like. I'll share it out with all of you in the morning if you'd like. We are working on something that's web-based, so we'll have photos and descriptions and timelines, and that'll be its own web page that Lauren's working on. So we've been taking lots and lots of pictures and updating the narrative on all of those projects, so at some point we'll have a nice presentation for anybody to visit.
And we're also using some sort of new software, right, to keep track of all our projects?
Yes. That's much of the numbers that we have now were coming out of Colby. So we're getting very close, and we're actually, Meg and I have been working with the manufacturer of the software to try and get specific reports that will be helpful for you and for our bond oversight committee that are pretty easy to look at and not too much of an information overload. But yeah, those figures are in there, and we are keeping track of our budget, and we are putting all of their invoicing so all of the expenses are being tracked.
And it's expected to be a kind of short turnaround for those updates or upgrades that we're asking for report-wise?
As far as the status of the projects?
I mean, just updating the software, because I know, databases can be buggy if you don't have the right reports.
Yeah, well, we spent quite a bit of time, our financial group spent quite a bit of time with data entry because, as you can imagine, the bond program has a lot of data entry. So my most recent conversation is that they're very, very close to having it completely ready to go. Other than, even future projects, budgets are in there. There just isn't anything to charge against them yet.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, thank you. I just would like to thank you for the transparency and bringing this forward and your work.
Thank you very much.
So moving forward to F3, attendance report end of year 2017-18. Dr. Wagner.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. School Board, I bring to you the first of this year's, this is actually our year-end report for 2017-18, but it's our first of 3 attendance reports for the year. So highlighting, I think I want to start with, there's going to come a time when we stop talking about the community-specific factors from 2017-18 that impacted our schools, but I think it is absolutely important to look at our attendance data, a lot of it through that lens. Especially, I note that before I talk about this annual attendance rate, that we were seeing pretty good numbers heading into December, and then those were impacted when I gave my mid-year report last year, and so we're seeing the effects of that. But there are plenty of things to celebrate here, and definitely areas around which we need to continue to set goals and work. P2 is the annual attendance rate. It's really the annual attendance rate of P2, which Ms. Jate tells me is a specific day in the spring. And we compare that to our P1 date, and we get our annual attendance rate. It's used for collecting ADA. So we can see that we have slowly been inching up year after year. The goal in the state of California is 95%. We are so close. So I'm confident a year from now I'll have a number that's in excess of 95%. And I know that's on tape, so we'll be able to go back and look at that. So really chronic absenteeism, though, is now that measure, that metric that we look at very closely, and it is a part of our LCAP, specifically specified in goal number 2. The district absentee rate was 15.3% in 2017-18. That was an increase of a little over 0.5% from the previous year, but no increase is to be celebrated. However, in January, when I reported the first semester to you, it was 16.5%. And so we did see a decrease from January to June of 1.2%. And given the year that we have, the fire, flu, and flood, I think that it can be attributed to that. If we look at over a 2-year period of time, we're still down almost 2% for all students. I'd like to see that decreasing more steadily. We see disproportionality continues. We are especially concerned about our students with disability who have the highest rate of chronic absenteeism. Again, chronic absenteeism is students who miss more than 10% of the school year, so more than 18 days of school, or a month of school or more. So we need to continue to work on those, set goals around them. 13 of our schools had increased rates of chronic absenteeism, but 6 did decrease their rates even in this difficult year. And I wanted to specifically call those out. Franklin, Harding, McKinley, Roosevelt, Dos Pueblos, and La Cuesta had decreased rates of chronic absenteeism. We had 2 subgroups that have seen a 2 all but two subgroups have seen a 2-year decrease in chronic absenteeism. And Asian students and students who are reclassified English proficient have not seen decreases. And again, students with disabilities are our major area of concern. Truancy, which really, again, is a form of chronic absenteeism. It's any type of absence that does not get called in and is not excused. We're still trying to inform our parents about what is an excused versus unexcused absence. Things like a trip to Disneyland when Grandma and Grandpa come out, it's not excused. If a family makes that choice to take students out of school to do that, that's theirs, but it's not an excused absence. So we continue to do education of families around that fact. But truancy is really when there's no phone call to the office or no note that's written to clear the absence. So we saw a decrease in our truancy rates. We still have disproportionality amongst our different subgroups. And again, if you look at our students with disabilities, they have the highest rate of truancy in our district, nearly 1/3. So in terms of truancy, I think in our high schools, we definitely saw the impact of the Dean of Student Engagement position. DP did see an uptick, a slight uptick, but they continue to have significantly lower rates of truancy than the other two traditional high schools. But Santa Barbara High and San Marcos saw decreased rates of truancy last year. In those elementary schools who had decreases in their chronic absenteeism, decreases in truancy, I really attribute that specifically to them working with our district attorney and their program, making use of those services, putting systems in place at the schools to improve attendance. And then again, the students with disabilities. I'm going to keep saying that, and we talked about it. It's one of our big rocks in special ed management is to create whole new plans about how we address attendance with our families through IEPs and other methods. So what are the next steps? Again, LCAP goal number 2 is to engage students and families to promote student success. We are using the LCAP as the conceptual framework through which we do much of our work as a district. And so really using attention to attendance, A2A, to inform us using data. The Dean of Student Engagement has a PLC now. They meet once a month to look at data, to compare best practices. Now in all but one of our junior high schools, they have a dean, and so there's that role that's really focused on student engagement. Putting systems in place for site-based monitoring of attendance and supporting families around attendance, addressing those family-specific issues that impact attendance. Students with disabilities, once again, really putting a plan in place. And then use of a conceptual framework that is going to guide our work. And really, in order to tackle a large problem such as chronic absenteeism, we have to use a conceptual framework. And so this framework here of working with the community, using our strategic partnerships through the DA Truancy Program, a system of shared accountability through monitoring and reinforcing policies, that idea of positive engagement, social emotional learning, the collaborations that we're going to have in the mental health realm, preschool through grade 12, using actionable data. Our systems that we're building to allow school site administrators to look at real-time data to assess how they're doing. And then building capacity of working together. That's where the Dean PLC came into play of bringing these folks together on a monthly basis to interpret their data and solve problems together. So I think with that, I will open it up for questions and discussion. Ms. Parker?
Yeah, on the high school level, do you break it out? Do you do the analysis by grade level as well? As a parent of a Santa Barbara High School graduate, certainly I got a lot of phone calls, a lot of automatic phone calls his senior year about missing classes that I had not gotten in previous years, and it was really about his age, access to a vehicle, timing, and just attitude about school as a senior. And so I know that it probably would have been helpful to have a family discussion before senior year started around expectations and attendance. But I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like that was ever like just directed to senior parents.
Right.
And so that's a question mark that I have.
So to answer your question, and that's certainly data I could bring to the board, that I have many different vantage points from which I look at the data, and one is that grade. So if you look at kindergarten, the chronic absenteeism is up here, and it slowly goes down. It kind of levels off grades 2 through, like the best attendance is usually in 6th grade. I don't know what it is, but 6th grade, and then it slowly, and then senior year, is the year it becomes higher than kindergarten. And you see it really go up in 11th and 12th grade, and it's exactly what you're talking about. I think when you talk about students who have access to cars, their friends have cars, they have feet, and they're allowed to leave a campus on their own, what's compelling them to stay in school? That's the engagement piece. The situation you described with your son is one reality. The other reality is for students for whom school has become, insignificant. Class is not a place they want to be or see a reason to be. And those are really the students that the deans are trying to re-engage. But as you talk about, I grapple with, what do we tell a senior parent whose child's getting good grades that they need to be in class? And I've seen that. I've seen students who have poor attendance, but they have all A's in high-level classes. And so that's a whole other ball of wax that we need to talk about.
Ms. Capps?
Well, on that point, how much money does the district lose for an unexcused absence?
Well, when we're out of basic aid, but we're going back in, but Ms. Jate, what's our ADA per student per day right now?
Daily, it's about $47 a day. That's just for LCFF funding.
Yeah. So I mean, it's probably only motivating to some parents, but I think maybe potentially that knowledge could be for those who choose to take their kids on vacation and miss a whole week and that kind of thing.
Right.
Really making the district suffer.
And I've actually, some parents do respond to that. Others say, well, you just want my kid to come to school for the money.
Right.
And then I say, well, no, but that is, for some parents, they don't do the math and go, oh, yeah, okay. So it does compel some people, yeah.
But if you look at that, thank you, I'm so sorry. But if you put that 47 in just singular, it seems small, but in aggregate, it seems a lot. So even having that approach too, that one kid is $47, but a number of kids is more than $47 in terms of those pieces. So it's magnified by that.
So if our average daily attendance is 94.8, that's 5.2% of our students, 5.2% of 13,900 is whatever it is, times 47, and that's how much we lose per day for absences. So it definitely does add up.
So Thank you, and I think this data is important, and I'm sure that principals are aware if their school is, and it's nice that most schools have seen an increase, but could you kind of talk about the ones that haven't, or the ones of more concern where the rates are going in the wrong direction?
I would say the elementary schools I'm most concerned about, I would say are Cleveland Elementary, and I know that Mr. Sandoval is working really hard with his school to try to improve that. They have goals in the office when you walk in on the right-hand side. Monroe is definitely on. Santa Barbara Community Academy was a concern. Ms. Scharfeld has taken to the DA truancy program like moth to a flame and is just going gangbusters with that, and we've seen a reversal. So I would say that is improving, but those are the 3 elementary schools. Goleta Valley Junior High, both chronic absenteeism and truancy is an issue. Santa Barbara Junior High's rate is high. They saw their truancy go down, but their chronic absenteeism is still remains high, and LaCoumbra's is high as well. Theirs actually jumped. LaCoumbra's jumped 4% last year, 15.8%. So that was an outlier year for them. San Marcos saw, and I think I attribute this to their dean, Jen Balacious, who worked very, very hard. Their truancy rate dropped last year, but their chronic absenteeism rate is 10% higher than the next highest traditional high school, which is Santa Barbara High. So Santa Barbara High, 20%, San Marcos High School, 29.4%. And that's actually an improvement for them, but 1/3 of their students are chronic absentees. Santa Barbara High has had the highest truancy rate consistently, but their truancy rate has dropped 10% in the last 2 years. So they're going in the right direction. So I would say I have some concerns about all of those, but some of I think the movement in most of them is in the right direction, but they have some heavy lifting to do.
Another question, thank you. Would you mind just giving an example of the DA program and what a strategy would be?
So the way, just encapsulate the DA truancy program, and it's a misnomer, it's actually called CLASS, and but because the DA runs it, and it's really not about truancy anymore, it's about that chronic absenteeism. So our district sent out over 17,000 letters last year talking to families about attendance. So there are a series of letters that families get when they hit certain points. And this is all part of the truancy program. So the letters are important. Once a student becomes chronically absent, which in the month of September means they miss 3 days, they're chronically absent. If they go to a second letter and they remain chronically absent, they're invited to what's called an after-school meeting, and it's a group meeting where a representative from the district attorney comes, meets with the administrator and the families, and talks about the importance of attendance. And then there are 3 more steps that are taken. The next step is an administrator meeting, so a one-on-one between the administrator and the family if things don't improve. Then it goes on to what's called a truancy mediation team. The DA sends a representative, the administrator, a school counselor, maybe the teacher and the family. They come together, and that's kind of the last-ditch effort to try to turn things around before it goes to SARB, which is the School Attendance Review Board. At that time, they sign a contract. They provide counseling services to the family, try to get at the root of the issue underlying the attendance. And then, if it doesn't improve and the student continues to rack up unexcused absences, they go to the School Attendance Review Board, which is made up of community partners. I'm the chair of that committee, and then the DA is there, and a student ultimate. We still try to resolve the issue and give families a chance to turn things around. But there are times when there's a referral to probation and possibly court for the family. But as you can see, there are 5 steps that we go through before it gets to that.
Can you share what some of the feedback is when you're in that first step, the reasons why the chronic absenteeism?
I forgot to call. I leave for work at 6 a.m. and I leave my son to get himself up for school, and he's 15 and he doesn't get himself up. I mean, it can just be a wide variety of things. Oh, my child has this illness, and at that point, it could be, there are actually things that we can do to excuse absences for chronic illnesses that we weren't aware of. So all of it is really about getting to the root cause and working with the family to do whatever it takes to get the child in school.
Ms. Parker?
I'd like to circle back to the ADA, and we're currently what was formerly known as basic aid, but now community funded, popping out of that, and then going to go back in to being a community, and Mr. Tay is crossing her fingers there. But within the expectation is that in just a few years we'd be back in that. In terms of when we are community funded, there is no hit to our finance if ADA, if they don't attend. Is that correct?
Not for LCFF funding, that's correct, but there are other funding that is based on ADA. For example, lottery. So if they don't show up, that's all based on ADA. There's others, they're escaping me right now, but there are others that rely on that also.
Okay.
But the main thing is that we may not be hit financially, but we still need our kids in school.
Well, I was going to say that in some ways the finance piece is the finance piece, but it's the state accountability measures. I mean, we will be still held accountable if our students aren't there. And so, there are many other reasons besides money, and so I just want to be sure that we remember that as we bounce in and out how much money it means or doesn't mean. There's so much communication around parents that don't understand what their students are missing by not being in the classroom. It can be pretty frustrating, those conversations.
Thank you. I was just going to add that the best practices of those leaders in the school sites that are actually, like you said, getting it done, are those shared out on a regular basis, or how is there? I mean, obviously that Mr. Sandoval has a big sign in his office. I mean, the leadership and the culture of the community is certainly impactful in that instance. At least he's trying to change the trajectory.
Yeah, I think one area that we really need to improve, and it's got to, in addition to focusing on special ed, I want to continue to try to help elementary principals find a way to address the issues, because really it impacts all students who miss school, but in kindergarten through grades 3, it's crucial. It's crucial. And so our elementary principals have so much to do. They are the Lone Ranger, so to speak. And so finding a way that we can support them around this has been my struggle. And developing these systems in the Dean, like the Dean PLC, and letting them, I watch them, and I don't run those meetings when I attend. They're in there just on fire to try to improve these measures for students. And so being able to find a way for elementary principals to do that is a piece to tackle. I'll say I did ask some of them, what their secrets were. For example, at Roosevelt, Ms. Bazemore had Emily Young, who's one of their classified staff. They don't rely on an automated phone call.
Emily's actually calling and personally speaking to folks, and then phone calls that need to be made in Spanish, they do that, and they're doing a personal reach out. I know LaQuesta did that as well, so not relying on the automated calls. But it's a lot different at Roosevelt versus Santa Barbara High with 2,200 students. It's a little harder. But.
Thank you. And it's true, though, elementary is where we really want to start to make the impact. If we start there, then hopefully it can continue and also impact our literacy and the concerns that we have there. So I would hope that perhaps there might be some sort of framework design that has best practices that all the elementary principals could get on board with. Because if something is working in one school, it could work in another. So I guess the transparency of what does work would be something to look at.
Absolutely, and I do want to say that the CALM, the consultancy model that CALM's bringing in, addressing families who have the chronic absenteeism will be a part of that, because for many families, mental health of the parents is often the issue. And so we've already talked about how can they support around this attendance piece in elementary school. But I agree, putting together those best practices and having the elementary principals have that conversation is important.
Ms. Sims-Moten?
And I would just back up a step further, and how do we, in the kindergarten readiness, as we advocate in the early care and education community, how can we, as we're advocating for that, preschoolers that are going to TK, how can we talk about the importance of attending school and how it's important to be there? So that's another way, as I was sitting here at this conversation, how can we start it a little bit earlier as we go through our kindergarten readiness activities, so that then we can maybe have an articulation with the elementary school teachers as well as with the early care and education community, so we're able to work together from the beginning to be able to see that, emphasize the importance of school. So I can take this conversation back to incorporate some of the practices that we're doing and advocating as part of the 5 protective factors, and including that piece, how important it is to be in school from the very beginning. So hopefully I'll be able to get with you and work with that, how we can maybe incorporate that message a little bit earlier.
Absolutely. Okay. I'd say one thing that I do want to push around the parent-teacher meetings is actually having a conversation about attendance in that meeting, and so especially for students who are struggling academically and tying those pieces of data together.
All right, thank you. Because school's fun, right?
I love school.
Yeah, so come on, we want everyone to go, for goodness sakes, and be there on time.
Before we leave this topic, I often find myself when I listen to these reports, just to get a sense of perspective. So I often jump on DataQuest. And so, you just think about it. If a worker missed 10% of their job, that's a problem. And it's great to get this progress, but the idea that, wow, we're at 10%. Statewide, chronic absentee rate, 10.8%. Santa Barbara County, 9.0%. Anything around 10% just strikes me as like it's just not a good, it's not a good goal to get to 9%. I was just cruising around, so Santa Clara County, where I spent most of my career, it's actually 8.6%. LA County is higher than us. Central Valley, I was just, wow, like 15%, 16%. Ventura County is a little better than us. Ventura County, 8.8%. So, there's all these comparisons. I just want to remind us that, the goal is to get that number better, but there's the other side is, how come kids don't come to school? How come school isn't engaging? How come they don't come back after lunch, our high school juniors and seniors? So, there's some developmental things going on in our seniors, but school should be a place where I don't want to miss it. So I just close with those comments.
All right, thank you, Dr. Wagenick. And we have our final report. Discussion of mission, vision, and core values for Santa Barbara Unified School District. Mr. Matsuoka.
I wanted to ask if that video by Dan Heath, was that viewable? Did you click on that in the board report? Could you get to the video? And then, okay, so given the response, the video is about 3.5 minutes long. Would you like to see the video? Okay.
Sure.
All right, because, let's see, Brian's gonna jump off. I'm going to jump on. And hopefully it goes.
I want to show you why most mission statements are so terrible. So let's say that you own a chain of pizza parlors, and maybe you have a mission statement that you've drafted, and it says something like, our mission is to serve the tastiest damn pizza in Wake County. Now that's pretty good, if you ask me. If I was one of your employees, I could get excited about that. But here's where things go off the rails. So you invite all your colleagues to come join you and to help you wordsmith this thing, and you all sit around the table, and right in front of your eyes, a transformation happens. All of these people who you like and respect suddenly become 10th grade English teachers and begin to nitpick every word of this thing.
Hey, I really like the word present better than serve. It has a nice resonance.
We obviously can't say damn. And why limit ourselves to Wake County? And guys, I know our pizza is good, but what about the calzones and salads? Why don't we just say highest quality Italian food? Our Greek salad isn't Italian. We haven't even talked about the atmosphere yet, with the big comfy booths and the kids' birthday parties and all that.
Yeah, great point. You know what we're really doing here? We're providing a family entertainment solution.
Yeah, solution. Nailed it. And everyone's excited now. You're almost there. And then Steve at the end of the table pipes up. Listen, guys, we haven't mentioned anything about integrity. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, integrity. And is anyone at the table going to rise up and go to the mat against the word integrity being in the mission statement? Doubtful. So, presto, that's in. And now here's your new and improved mission statement. Our mission is to present with integrity the highest quality entertainment solutions to families. I know this is a little bit silly, but you gotta admit, this is what 99% of mission statements sound like. And now you know why. There's this cycle of making words more ambiguous and more fancy until all of the meaning, leaches out. Here's how to avoid that. 2 tips. Number 1, use concrete language. Great example comes from this fast-growing small business called Sonic Bids. Check this out. We want to help musicians get gigs and promoters book the right bands. We're a bunch of people who think that music can truly change the world and make it smaller and better. Now, I love that. I think it gives you a picture of exactly what they do and also gives you a hint why they might want to do that. And that brings us to the second point, which is talk about the why. Most mission statements are really long on statement and really short on mission. And the whole point of this is to talk about why you're doing what you do. You've got to talk about what makes you care. So let me give you a famous example from Johnson & Johnson. This is the first line in their credo. Our first responsibility is to the doctors, nurses, and patients, mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services. Well, all right. That's something that you could get out of bed to go do. Now contrast that with the guiding principles of ExxonMobil. Did you feel that? A little part of your soul just died. So now you've seen why bad mission statements happen to good people, and I've given you 2 tips for avoiding that fate. If you're interested in learning more about writing a great mission statement, go to fastcompany.com/heat. And in the meantime, I want to challenge you to do the impossible, to create a mission statement that says something. And one final hint, if it includes the word solution in it, you're not there yet. Thanks for watching.
I actually got that link through another group where we had a board meeting, and the timing was perfect because the CEO sent it out. And I actually know the other brother, Chip Heath, really well because he's a resident of Los Gatos, where I was superintendent. I'd never actually met Dan Heath, but that was really good. And it's their first book that they created called Made to Stick. I read it a long time ago, and I pulled it off the shelf again as I wrestled with this. Okay, so here we go. All right, mission, vision, and core values for Santa Barbara Unified. So it's sort of understood that mission and vision is critical for an organization. What does it do? It creates alignment, or at least the possibility for alignment, creates energy, and creates a picture of the future that we should all work towards. In my sort of research about mission and vision, I've actually struggled in my leadership career with the difference between the two. So I finally forced myself to sit down and just really think about it, read, I looked at a lot of examples, and this has been about a month's piece of work. A mission statement, I love this summary. It should explain why we exist and what we do. And it should answer these three simple but really difficult questions. What we do, for whom we do it, and what is the benefit for society. A vision statement should describe where we want to be, and I added the parentheses in the near future. I think you should create a vision statement that's got about a 3-year time trajectory. If it's like 10 years, it could work, but I think there should be something sort of pressing about it. Like it should move us to action now to get there quickly. The other thing I like about it, it's aspirational. It paints a picture of where we want to be in time. Okay, so you just heard Dan Heath. I pulled my copy of Made to Stick off the shelf. The subtitle is Why Some Ideas Survive and Others Die. I can summarize the book with those 6 words. So, memorable messages are simple. I like the idea of unexpected. It's concrete, credible, emotional, and it should tell a story. And so if you're interested in the book, board members, let me know, because I just passed it out to cabinet today. Because I think our challenges with communication, and I'll tell you, in education, we love words. We create the biggest, loftiest statements, paragraphs, and sometimes our parents, they look at all the words and it just sort of glazes over. So I collected a whole bunch of them. I presented just what I thought were some of the better ones. I actually found some that are like totally not inspiring, but I thought I'll just present what I thought were some good ones. I'm not going to read these to you. You can read them. You've already read them. I was at Starbucks. I never thought about their mission statement. And I think they're succeeding because there's a Starbucks like every 3 blocks. And that idea of creating community, it actually makes sense with what they pulled off. Tesla is a very intriguing company. It's the vision of a kind of a singular man who needs to focus if his company's to survive. He's created an incredible product and brand. I think those mission and vision statements are really clear. They're really strong. I think Tesla is achieving them, but they better focus on their core mission, or they're at risk. I did not include Westinghouse in the narrative, but I put it in the slide deck because I'll tell a quick story about these. I like GEs, and Westinghouse is really boring. And because it was so boring, they ceased to exist in about, I think it was 1996, where the parent company Viacom, who bought out the company who bought Westinghouse, finally absorbed Westinghouse and it no longer exists. These 2 companies were birthed at the same time, about 1880. And they actually were competitors for 100 years. And then GE continues to reinvent itself. They're fighting for their survival again because it's a hard space. But GE exists and Westinghouse does not, because I believe GE has a modern mission statement and a vision statement. So as I thought about these, and we talked about it in cabinet and with our leadership team, the better ones shape the future of society. The other ones, and I didn't show you them, they just kind of talk about themselves and what they do. Like the Westinghouse is a good example. We build railroads. Okay, well, but they did not shape the future. GE is trying to shape the future. They're in a hard space, but they've moved into the medical device field. And a lot of our treatment centers have, you'll see the GE icon. They make things that are just gigantic, jet aircraft engines, turbines for like hydroelectric plants. They just make really big things. So I sit in front of our mission statement at every board meeting. And if I were to ask you without looking at it, could you quote our mission statement? I asked our leaders, and they came up with every child, every chance, every day. Because that's memorable, but that's not our mission statement. It sits behind me, and by the way, it sits at the other end of this building above the entrance in the lobby. I noticed that. I was looking out the door of the other board meeting. When you recite this mission statement, it feels like it's a paragraph. It's so long. I would say that this mission statement is too long. It's got a lot of words. Every word is very important and meaningful, but it is not memorable. If you asked an employee of our district, do you know what our mission statement is? They would go, I have no idea. Our leaders, we actually recited it at our leadership retreat. I'm not going to ask the board to do it, but it had a notable effect in the room. It's like by about the third sentence, we were just wishing it would be done because it just keeps going on and on and on. We've got to have a mission statement that's short, that has high impact. If you can't remember it, it's not going to influence the way you do work. So here comes an iterative process. The team began with Brian Rouse, myself, and Chelsea Guillermo. We were actually starting to work on the strategic plan update. But I said, God, we need to think about the mission statement. We actually came out of the design room, we came in here, and we looked at it on the wall, and we had the same reaction. It's too long, can't remember it, what do we do? So this was the first one that our little team came up with. And the idea is we got to get kids ready for the world that is coming. That was the thing we were trying to capture. But it was too long. Develop our students, and then put in the word like our kids are going to have to reinvent themselves. I mean, that's what I'm seeing in the millennial workforce. I see it in my kids. I see it in the friends of my kids. Like, they're changing jobs every 2 years. And in some cases, they're changing career trajectories. And they've retrained themselves online to pick up a whole new career set. So then mission statement 3, I felt like I needed to come back towards more traditional language. So it's good, it's nice. And then that evening I picked up the copy of Made to Stick at home. I just said, I'm stuck. And so I skim read chapters 1, chapter 2, and then I said, okay, let's try again. So it got shorter. Okay. And then finally this thread emerged, preparing students for a world that is yet to be created. And that did something in me at home, and then this was the version that we shared with our leadership team. And the conversation went on for a solid 20 minutes. It was a rich conversation. And the one word change that happened is to remove the word has and make it more active to is. So we prepare students for a world that is yet to be created. Now, does it answer the 3 questions about a mission statement? Does it answer what we do? Does it state for whom we do it? And does it state the benefit it does indirectly for students? And you haven't read the book, Made to Stick, but I think it fits about 3 or 4 of those key concepts in that book. So your leaders of 60 of us, we We had a really rich conversation at our retreat. It resonated with them. Been testing it off different people around the district. I tested it with my brother and sister-in-law up in the Bay Area who are, corporate attorney and literally a rocket scientist. And it resonated with them. So I present this as a draft of a mission statement. So I'm going to invite the board's comments, questions, concerns. What are your thoughts?
All right, thank you, Mr. Matsuoka. So anyone want to pipe up first? Mr. Paredes, you go.
I've actually had the chance to sit with this a little bit longer than everyone else. I was actually at the San Diego Education Foundation meeting where Mr. Matsuoka presented it, and I've shared it with Mr. Matsuoka, but I think this is fantastic. It's something you put on a t-shirt, something more importantly that our staff and our faculty can kind of walk around with. And I think it really sets up expectations of us as a district, from our parents, from our community, from each other to say, this is what we're doing. It's not going to prescribe every single step that we have to take to fulfill it, but that's really up to us. As educators, as staff, as faculty, that's our number one responsibility, is creating, the steps it's going to take, the tools it's going to take, and implementing them in the proper way for our students to become prepared for a future that has not been created yet. So I dig it, I love it. Once we adopt it, I want a t-shirt with it, so. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Ms. Parker?
I mean, I'm just curious, I think you said that it's something that you're going to be testing out with the community, is that correct?
I wanted to run it by our school board first because I don't want to go out in the community with a draft statement that you have concerns about. I think where I would test this with the community is I probably would gather an audience of maybe through our PTAs and that leadership structure to test it there. If there's a large parent gathering, would love to throw this out. It's not a long conversation, but it's just like what resonates, what questions do you have? Internally with our employees, TLAC is certainly a future body. I mean, it represents K-12 across the district. I just would want to put this out and say, it really begs some questions and some explanations. Whoa, what do you mean the future that's yet to be created? How do you know what the future is going to be? Well, that's the whole point. We don't know, but that's the future that our kids are going to land in. So I think I'll create some opportunities to invite the community in. It's really asking the question of all of our stakeholders, does this make sense?
I would just say that I've had a little bit more time too, like Mr. Paredes Ulloa. But what raised in my mind was we prepare students for a world that is yet to be created. And so I'm thinking, so what are we doing about it? So it makes me want to reflect back at the district, at our teachers, at our principals, and it actually inspires, I think, reflection and transformation. So what are you doing to transform and to transition to this 21st century global world? So I think for me, it brought that question on. So so I think that if we, as you pull this forward to get response, I think it's important that principals and teachers and our leaders in our district and the cabinet are reflecting back and saying, well, what is it that we aren't doing? And what can we be doing to ensure that we are preparing our students for a world that is yet to be created? So really reflecting on our practice, which is one of our key values. So I would say that this really brings forward the reflection piece and then the professional development around what can we be doing to make that change. So it actually can drive our district towards meeting new goals around this. So it kind of became more open-ended and reflective for me. Ms. Sims Martin?
I just still need to sit with it a little bit. It didn't necessarily jump out at me. What it did pose for me was a lot of questions, pretty much on that same line. And where I didn't get was where we would get the emotional, where we would get those stories out of that, what would be born out of that. So that it raised more questions. So I probably still need a little bit more time to sit with it. I like that it's short in terms of those pieces, but I'm still, it didn't just hit me. Because it's still like this statement, sometimes there's still questions, how are we doing that? This statement still does that for me, how are we doing that? It hadn't got that part yet to say how that we're gonna do it. So that's my comments.
All right, well, thank you I think it's important that we reflect on it is, the only thing too that we didn't mention, but this is in title, so we have to really be prepared when we make that change, right, that we're gonna knock that thing down.
I will just say that actually only the outside is tile. And that was done very deliberately, so don't worry.
All right.
That's great. Is it a whiteboard?
I didn't notice that the center part is just a white surface. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka. So, moving forward to, let's see, coming events. Looks like, let me just get back to my. Coming events. Do we have any coming events that we have not talked about as of yet? Ms. Parker?
We haven't talked about kickoff on Monday morning at 8 a.m.
Right.
San Marcos High School, is that correct?
San Marcos High School. I'll get an email out to you just to confirm who can be there, because I'll love to introduce you. So 8 a.m. will begin, and I do plan on writing a speech around this draft mission statement. And so if you get a chance to listen to it, you'll hear some of my thinking about why these words, and to begin to answer some of those why questions, why this, and what do we do? So, and then school opens Wednesday. It will be a busy day. By the way, we have built a, what's the name of that system? High profile?
VIP special events.
So we've built a VIP special events. It's going to be a Google spreadsheet so that you can sign up for, like, when we got all the back to school nights set up, so that you can just indicate which ones that you can make. What's going to be helpful is so that the principals know who's coming without this email thread that just takes forever. We'll do it for the events that board members typically would go to, so back to school nights, open houses in the winter, so big events, and sometimes one-offs, where we think this is an event where the board would be interested in attending. And then we've got some facility opening moments to have. I think we're looking at these multi-purpose rooms, and your schedules will be busy, so we'll start pushing that out to you, and you'll just be able to sign up, and that way we have a record of who's going to come. Good.
All right, yes, just to put one more plug in to the coffee with the board members at Harding Elementary, that's where it's going to be, in the new multi-purpose room at Harding. So she was all excited about that. She's just thought it was the greatest deal. So come one, come all. And any future agenda items? All right. I know that we have some items that we discussed previously, and I've addressed them with Mr. Matsuoka, and so we plan to have those in the coming agendas. So thank you. So our next meeting will be Tuesday, August 28th, regular board meeting starting at 6:30, and I am going to adjourn the meeting if I have my board members' approval. Yay. All right.